Hey guys, PB here from the Home Automation Project. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can configure an open source router software called pfSense and how you can configure physical VLANs in your home network so that you can keep your IoT devices safe and secure, as well as segregated on a different VLAN from your main LAN. There are multiple reasons that why you would want to do that. The number one reason being not compromising on the speed and bandwidth of your main network, as opposed to when you have got, say, your cameras running 24/7 on another VLAN, and also your IoT devices talking to each other on one of the VLANs. The other thing is security. You don't want the IoT devices to be accessing your main LAN, so you would probably put them some firewall rules around these VLANs so that those IoT devices cannot talk to your main LAN by bypassing these rules. So that's also something I'm going to show you in this setup. So I'm going to use a simple switch like this one, which from TP-Link. This is a 5-port one. You can also get this in multiple more ports like 8 or higher. And one of these ports I'm going to configure as the WAN interface. The rest of the ports will be the VLAN interfaces, which you want to configure. And one of them I will leave as the default VLAN, which is VLAN 1. And I'm going to show you how you can set this up so that this is going to be a very important tool that you need if you are going to try and build your own smart home ecosystem. And this is very important to keep your networks fast, reliable, and secure, as well as it allows you to do remote access without compromising on the security, which I'm going to show you later video as well. So without further ado, let's get started. The devices that I'm going to use to install pfSense. So I have got this Intel NUC, which is a very standard Intel NUC, and has got some standard ports here like the Ethernet jack and the HDMI, and the two HDMI ports. So the things that we need to connect is definitely we'll need an internet on a connection, because pfSense software, when installing it, tries to connect to the Netgear servers to download the latest version. You will also need ideally an HDMI wire to connect hooked up to a monitor so that you can see the progress of the installation, and obviously you will need the power source, and you will need a USB pen drive to load the software. So as a first step, let's go ahead and download the software from Netgear and then start the installation process. So to install this software, you need to go to this pfsense.org/download location, and here you can download the latest stable versions. If you just click download, you'll see this cart-like interface. In my case, most Intel NUCs are generally AMD 64 based processor, so I'm going to select this and then click add to cart, and you can see the bottom that one of this has gotten added, and then you can click accept and then check out. So here it asks for email and password. Just use any standard email or Gmail that you have to sign up, and then you can go ahead and download the software. I'm not going to complete this step because I've already done it and I've downloaded the ISO file. So we'll head over to the next step, where we need to write this ISO file to our to the USB drive, which is I have got this one here. So I'm going to write the file to the USB drive. So to write the ISO image to your pen drive, you need a software called Banana Etcher. So you can go to this website and click on download. And in my case, I've got the macOS with the AMD 64 processor. So I'm going to use this link to hit download. And once the download completes, I'll install it. So let's give it a few seconds for the download to complete. So once you've downloaded the ISO file, when you open this software, you can you need to select the flash from file option and then select the ISO file, open, and then in the target you need to make sure that you select the right target. So I've got the pen drive here, so let me just insert it. Okay, and as you can see, the pen drive appears here. This is the 8 GB drive, and this is the one I'm going to use. So select this, select one, and then hit flash. I'm not going to do this step, but it takes a few minutes for the ISO file to be flashed to the pen drive. Once you've done that, it's time for us to go and
start the setup installation of the pfSense. Okay, one thing to note here, by using the ISO image, I'm actually going to format my Intel NUC machine entirely with the pfSense operating system. So there you could actually install the pfSense as a software on an existing machine without necessarily having to override the entire OS. So you can have a pfSense software installed on Windows as an example, but in my experience I found that it is much easier to control the networking and firewall rules and ports when I have it as a standalone operating system on an Intel NUC rather than having it as a piece of software on a Windows PC setting on the network on the LAN. Let's go ahead and start the installation process on the mini PC now. Right, so I have now plugged in the USB and switched on my the Intel Mini NUC. One thing to remember, press the del key. In my case, it's the del key. You can check the manual out for your Intel NUC, but mostly either the F7 or the del key to enter into the boot menu here. And in here, and do make sure that you're connected with the keyboard to your Intel NUC so that you're able to use the keyboard to move across this menu. And in the boot options, you need to go and select the USB drive as your option for booting, as the first option for booting. So once you have done that, you can save and exit, and this should then boot up from your USB drive. Okay, so we'll let the system boot, and once the boot process is complete, it might look a bit different for your Intel Mini PC, but you should be greeted with this installer screen if you have the right USB pen drive inserted and if you have the right boot sequence. So hit accept and hit install pfSense. Okay, and this is where it says that it's going to set up the networks. Basically, it needs you need to be connected. Your mini PC needs to be connected to the internet before you hit OK on this. And it says selecting the WAN interface RE0 by default is it will detect the network that you're connected to, and by default it gives a name of RE0. You can just hit OK here. We are going to configure the VLANs later, so you can just skip these steps for now, or hit the default selection of these steps for now. So hit continue. So it says LAN not assigned, so just hit continue here for now and let it do its thing. So it's going to connect to the NetGet servers to download the latest version of pfSense to install. So yep, so next just install C and hit continue. If you need to change any of these options, you can check the documentation for pfSense, but most cases the default should work pretty fine. So just hit OK and OK, and then again OK, and then yes. So this is going to, as it mentions here, going to overwrite all the contents of a disk. So if you have a Windows setup, that is going to be overwritten by the pfSense OS. So current stable is yes, and I'll let it install. This is going to take several minutes. Right, so now the download has completed and the setup has been done. Hit enter for OK, and then hit enter to reboot. And do not forget to take out the pen drive so that it doesn't try the setup again. So So when you reach this point, it asks you, should VLANs be set up now? Enter yes, we need to set up since we need to set up a VLAN for the WAN interface. This is because there's only a single Ethernet port on our Intel NUC, so we will be using a VLAN tagging to set up WAN separate from the LAN interface, and we'll do a corresponding VLAN setup on the switch, TP-Link switch, so that you can assign two different VLAN tags on the same port of your Intel NUC, and this is how we'll segregate the traffic from WAN to the LAN. So just hit enter Y and hit enter. So you can see that there is only one interface to set up. So RE0, let's enter that as a parent interface. VLAN tag for the WAN, you can enter anything. I'm going to use 99, but you can use anything like 10 or 20. Is basically going to be your VLAN tag for WAN. Just hit enter, and here it asks for your interface for the WAN, so we are going to give it RE0.99, which is going to be a WAN interface, and then it asks for the interface for LAN, which is going to be RE0. RE0 is also like the default LAN, so it's same as RE0.1. Now in the VLAN world, the number 1 is like a default VLAN, and it gets assigned to all the VLANs. And in this case, that's what is getting assigned to our LAN. So we'll just put in RE0, which is the parent interface, which is also going to act as our LAN, and here it is confirming that the WAN will be tagged with 99. So all the WAN traffic will be tagged with the VLAN 99. So say yes and enter. So now it's going to take a few minutes to set up the VLAN interfaces, so we'll wait for it to complete. Okay, so now the VLAN configuration has been completed, and as you can see, it has assigned a default LAN of 192.168.1.1/24. So if you want to access the web interface, you can use this IP to access it. A few options are present on the menu here, which can be handy later on. As an example, the option number 4 is for resetting to factory defaults in case you need to do it if something goes wrong. And number 1 on the menu can be used to assign interfaces. If you think you have made a wrong assignment or you want to create additional interfaces, you can use option 1. Option 2 is an option to set a static IP. You can do that here, or you can also do it from the web interface by logging into that IP address. And similarly, there are a few other advanced options, but from this point on, it's easier to move to the web interface and continue from there. One thing that I'm going to still do here is I'm going to change the default IP to a different IP, because my Intel NUC, I'm going to change this default IP of subnet of 1.1 to a different one, because the network that I'm connected to is not actually 1.1, so but it is a subnet. So I'm just going to update that. So to do that, you can use option 2 here, hit enter, and then it asks which one are you going to change. So I'm going to update number 2 here, and it asks whether I want DHCP. So this I'm going to say no, because I'm going to configure a static one. As you can see, it shows the number 2 is already static, so that's pfSense by default creates a LAN as a static one, so that you can reach the pfSense server without having it changing its address on its own. I'm going to just change the subnet of that and still keep it static. So for DHCP, I'm going to say no, and for the new address, I'm going to give it static address outside my current DHCP range of the router. So the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm already on a VLAN right now. But if you are directly connecting to the router, if you are going to connect to the IP provided network, you don't need to do this. You can go with 1.1. You can always change that IP later. So here I'm going to say 24, and for LAN stream gateway address and for LAN. Okay, so since I'm configuring the LAN, I'm just going to press enter. DHCP6, I'm not going to configure this, so hit enter, and it says do you want to enable DHCP server on the LAN. I'm going to say this as no for now. The reason again I'm doing this is because I already have a DHCP server which is assigning IPs in this case, but in your case you would probably want to set it as yes, because this pfSense router is going to be your DHCP server as well. I'll show the same how you can do on the web interface, but for now just I'm going to say no and hit enter, and then it asks whether I want to revert as a HTTP. I would say yes here and just hit enter. So as you can see, I've got the IP I wanted, and I'm going to hit enter. Now our Java task here is done, and I'm going to go to the web interface by hitting the IP shown here, and then we are going to look into the next steps. Right, now I have come to my browser and entered the static IP address that we have set for the pfSense instance. Here is going to ask you for the username and password. When you are installing for the first time, there's a default username for pfSense is admin, and password is pfSense, pfSense in lowercase, and hit sign in. And once you do that, it will welcome you with the welcome wizard, with the setup wizard. So hit let's go ahead and configure the initial setup. One thing you will definitely need to do is change password for the admin. Okay, let's hit next here and next again. So hostname, I'm going to give it as pfSense test since I have a pfSense prod instance, and domain name I'm going to give as home.test. Sorry, okay, so this one I'm going to give as test.thap as my domain. I have a prod one which is home.thap, so to segregate from that. Now we have the primary and the secondary DNS server. So for this I generally like to use Google DNS servers, but you are free to choose anything. Like for example, you can use Open DNS servers as well. So you can just Google the IP address that you will need. I already know them, so I'm just going to type them in. Right, so the primary server is 8.8.8.8, and the secondary server is 8.8.4.4. okay, and leave it checked, and then next. I'm just going to hit next here, timeline setting, and the WAN interface DHCP, yep, that's correct. Now yeah, so here you need to select how your WAN is going to be configured. It depends on your ISP provider. It could be a static IP, or it could be DHCP or PPOE or PPTP. In my case, at my home network, I have PPPoE as my setup, so for that I'll need to go and enter the username and password here. However, for this video I'm not using my production instance. This is just a test instance, so I'm just going to leave it as DHCP and then hit next. So I'm just going to leave this as DHCP and the subnet mask as 24 and hit next. And here we need to change the admin password, so I'm just going to set it to some yeah, updating the password here, hit next and hit reload. Now we need to just give it a few minutes for the changes to take effect, and as you can see, it's already done. You can check for updates, but I'm just going to hit finish, and there you go. We have the standard disclaimer, and I'm going to close this. So now we have the setup done. Now one thing you'll notice here in the interface that you can see the WAN is showing as not applicable. This is because we haven't yet set up the WAN as you remember, we are still we only have one Ethernet port, so it's not pulling the WAN address correctly at the moment. So if you connect a PC to this router at the moment, you won't be able to browse internet because the WAN address is not assigned. So we need to fix that. So on the top menu, you'll see there are a few options here. From system menu, you can set up users, you can relaunch the setup wizard to make any changes, and set up certificates, etc. Here the interfaces is where you're going to configure the interfaces. The two interfaces we have right now is WAN and LAN, but if you set up more VLAN interfaces, you will get those, so you can configure them here. Firewall is probably one of the most important one. We're going to set up some rules. By default, if you go here, you will see that it has given you some default rules for WAN and LAN, and they're good enough, but to start with, but you will eventually need to create more rules to have better control. For example, here it says all the LAN subnets can access all the other LAN subnets, so default is allow LAN to any, but once we configure more VLANs, you would probably want to control the access between VLANs, across VLANs. For example, when we configure IoT VLAN versus a camera VLAN versus a guest VLAN, we don't want the guest VLAN to be able to access the camera VLAN, but maybe we want them to access certain IoT devices, so we can configure all those rules here. Services, you can have DHCP server is probably the most important one, and then VPN is something we'll see in a later video, how to configure OpenVPN. And in status here you can see the DHCP leases. If any machine would have connected to the server, this is where you will see all the other IP addresses assigned to them, and from this interface you could also assign static IPs or wake online instructions. Diagnostics, as you can use this menu to diagnose any kind of issues that you face, and also for backup restore operations. So this is also pretty handy. To set up the WAN, we need to do two things. First, we need to configure the switch with the proper VLAN tagging, which I'm going to show you now, and then next we need to wire the switch to the interface. I'm going to show you how you can do that as well. Right, so now I have the TP-Link switch here. So first thing, I'm going to connect it to the power source. So switching it on here, and I'm going to reset it by pressing this this hole here. Yeah, I'm going to use the SIM ejector to press to this hole here, which says reset, and I'm just going to reset the switch. The light blinks, so that there's a blinking on the light here, so that tells me that the switch has been reset. So these TP-Link switches come with a default IP of, I believe the IP is 192.168.1.2. yeah, but so the first thing I need to do is I need to connect to this switch. Right, so to access the switch, I have actually inserted my spare LAN cable into the switch, and which has given it a default IP address based on the DHCP range that this VLAN is, and I'm able to access it. Its web interface. Since I've reset the switch, it should be the default entry should be admin. So let's try that. Admin, and let's hit login. Yeah, so the first time it is going to ask me to change the password. I'm just going to set it to something and hit enter, and this should be your default menu ideally. If you are using a different switch, you can have it supports VLANs. You should make sure, if you are using a different switch, you should make sure that it supports VLAN tagging and is a smart switch, so which means it can do managed as well as unmanaged VLAN tagging. So go to the VLAN option, and the two important sections that we need to worry about here, that we need to set up here, is the VLAN section, which is used for doing the tagging, and the PVID setting section, which is going to assign the VLAN IDs. So as you can see here, it says VLAN tag 1 is the default for all ports, and here also, if you can see, none of them are member of any port. So these two interfaces we need to change. So the way we are going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, the port 1 I'm going to configure as the WAN interface. So port 1 we are going to tag as 99, VLAN tag 99, and port 2 is going to be by default LAN interface. So that one I'm going to leave it untagged, default 1. So let's do that. Right, so we need to go to this VLAN menu here, and the two settings, that two menu items where we two places where we're going to do some settings is the VLAN tagging in this menu, and the PVID setting. So the way I'm going to configure is port 1, which is going to be my LAN port, and port 2 I'm going to set up as the WAN port. So WAN port is the one where you should be bringing the so the ISP provided connection should go into the port on the switch which we configure as the WAN port, and the LAN port should be connected to your Intel NUC, so that your pfSense is given a LAN ID, and it can then reach other LAN devices in your network. So that's how it is going to be. It's not that complicated. If you can pay, you can just follow the steps that I'm going to show you here now. So for the PVID setting, which is the easier one, we'll enter PVID as 99 because that's the one we set up for the 99 is the VLAN interface that we have set up, and we are going to mark port 2 as the PVID 99 and hit apply. Okay, so the first thing we need to do here is we need to set up some VLAN tagging. So I'm going to set the VLAN 99 and I'm going to name it as WAN. This name is just for reference purpose, not important. And then we are going to tag port 2, and we are going to leave the others as not a member, and add a modifier. Okay, yeah, so we need to hit enable and apply. Yeah, let's do that first. So first step is you need to hit enable and then apply, and once this is enabled, let's enter the VLAN 99 as the WAN, and then I'm going to tag port 2. I'm going to tag port 2 with 99 and hit apply. So as you can see, port 2 has been given a tag of 99, and the default that is 1, which is should be LAN. So I need to take that out. So what we need to do is VLAN ID 1, which is our default VLAN. We are going to say port 2 is not a member of that, and hit add modify. So you can see here that the ports 1 and 3 to 5, they are all part of the default LAN, which is 1, and then port 2 is only tagged with WAN traffic. So once the setting is done, you can go to PVID, and then here we want to give 99 PVID to port 2 and apply. So this is how it should look like. So with this setup done, now we can configure WAN traffic to flow through port 2 of your TP-Link switch, and we can connect our Intel NUC to port 1 so that it stays on the LAN and is able to reach other devices on the LAN. Right, so to do this, I have so right now let's imagine that this cable here, let's imagine this cable here is my ISP provided internet connection coming into my home. So this one is going to go into port 2 like so. So let me try and bring this up here. So this cable which is my WAN cable. So the supply cable from so the WAN cable is going to go into port number 2 here, and because this is going to be the incoming WAN traffic, and we're going to tag it with, we have tagged it with the VLAN tag 99. So this WAN cable should go here, and port number 1, which we have currently tagged. Actually right now all the other ports are port 1, so any of the ports can be used, but I'm going to show you how you can use other ports on the switch for a different subnets or VLANs. So I'm going to use port 1, and we're going to put cable from here to the Intel NUC. So I'm going to take another cable, and I'm going to put it here, and the other end of this cable is going to go into Intel NUC Ethernet port. The last step that I'm going to show you is how to set up other VLANs and how you can configure the switch to access those VLANs. So for setting up more VLANs, you can go to interfaces, assignments, and on here you can go to this VLANs tab. So as you can see, the 99 VLAN is the one which we created earlier. Here you click add, and then on the parent interface of LAN we can create let's say a VLAN with the VLAN tag 10, and let me call this IoT VLAN and hit save. So this creates another VLAN. Next step, you have to go to assignments, and here you need to click add, and then there's a default naming given by pfSense OPT1 for this VLAN 10. So you can click on this name, and here you can name it with a more meaningful name, and don't forget to take the enable interface here and here, and then change this to static, and I'm going to give this the first IP address, which is 10.1, and my subnet is 24, and we don't need to add this. You can block private networks if you want to, and then hit save, and then apply changes. So this kind of configures your interface for IoT. You can see here, and for configuring the DHCP range, if you go to your services under which DHCP server under services, here you should now see the new interface coming up. So here you can choose the address pool range. By default you can go from between 1 to 254. However, I like to keep it a restricted range, so I'm just going to give it, let's say we can give it a range of 10 to let's say 168.10.30. So basically I'm going to limit it to 20 devices on the IoT, and I don't need to change anything as such, and then I just hit save, right, and apply changes. So that kind of going to configure your this is how you can configure your VLANs, and you can decide the address range that those VLANs give to the devices. You can configure more VLANs as such. If you go back to assignments and VLANs, you can configure another one, let's say for guests, another one for cameras, etc., and so on. Now that you have done this, the one thing to remember is we need to also go back on the TP-Link switch and configure the port. We need to dedicate a different port, because at the moment if you see the remaining ports all are tagged to VLAN 1. So just now we created a VLAN 10. So as an example, let's say we want port 3 to be assigned VLAN 10 IP addresses. So first we need to create the VLAN here. So put the number here, and let's call it IoT, and then I'm going to tag port 3 here and hit add modify. So you can see port 3 is now tagged to 10. Again, we need to remove it from the default VLAN. If we don't want traffic from the default VLAN to flow through this, which is what I would ideally prefer, so hit 1 and then not a member for port 3. So port 3 is no longer a member of VLAN 1, and hit add modify. So you can again see that port 3 only allows traffic tagged with VLAN ID 10, and in PVID setting I'm going to add with 10 to port 3 and apply. So that's it. That's the setting you need to do. And after this, if you go on your, so let me take this out. So yeah, on the port 3, so port number 3 is now tagged with VLAN. So if you plug in your LAN cable into port number 3, so that should supply, that should tag devices, any devices connected to that LAN with a subnet of 10 or with a VLAN of 10. So that's how you create multiple, you can create multiple VLANs by using a switch with your Intel NUC, which has a single port. Last step that you need to do, you need to go to firewalls rules, and here you can see that you can set up rules based on each VLAN. So the by default IoT has no doesn't have any rule to allow anything, but you can add a rule here to say, let's say so the three ones are pass, block and reject. The most common one is pass and block to use here. So let's say we want all devices on our main LAN, which is LAN 1, to be able to access IoT devices, but we don't want any of these IoT devices to be able to access LAN 1 unless we specifically allow for a certain IP address. So the rule would be then a block rule. So any device on IoT and using any protocol, basically it should be destination should be LAN address, and then you hit save. So here the rules got added. So it's a block rule which says that any traffic cannot flow from IoT network to the LAN address network, and then you have it apply changes. If you want certain devices to be still able to access, then what you can do is, so you can add a rule below this which is a pass rule, and from the source you can say, instead of, let's say, you can give it a specific address. Yeah, so let's say a device which gets an IP of 10.5, you want this device to be able to access destination of LAN address, and instead of, or you can even say that instead of LAN address you can even give the exact address. For example, if you want your IoT devices to be able to reach your home assistant server, and let's say your home assistant server is on the primary LAN 1, then you can use this option, this firewall rule, to say, even though in general IoT devices will not be able to access anything on LAN 1, but you can allow them to access your let's say your home assistant instances on 110, then you can do a pass rule, and the protocol you can, the most common protocol to use is TCP UDP, but you can say any and then hit save. So the way the rules are processed is, yeah, don't forget to hit apply changes. So the way the rules are processed is from the top to bottom. So first it is going to block all access, and then it is only going to pass traffic from 10.5 to 1.10. So that's how this is going to work. One last thing, if you want to block internet access on specific devices, you need to add a rule at the, ideally at the top. So just hit add, and you block that specific source to any protocol for that source, and you can give the address of the source. Let's say again 192.168. .5, and you can block the TCP protocol. Name this block internet and save. So make sure that the block internet is the first top rule to process. So basically this prevents this device from accessing the internet, because you have blocked it from accessing any other address other than the 110 which is within your network. So that's how you can block internet access as well. There's a quite comprehensive documentation on the pfSense website, so you can have a look there and you can play around with these rules. But as you can see, it's a pretty useful interface, and it gives you a very detailed control over the firewall rules, and there are many more advanced functionality of how you can configure the firewall. So but I just wanted to cover the basics of how you can set this up. This is the exact same way I've been using this, and it has been great because I have been able to segregate my traffic. I've been able to block access to all my camera feeds, and I'm still able to access them from Home Assistant and FreeGate in my home network. So that has been this setup has been working very well for me.
So hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you can create a remote access using OpenVPN on your pfSense router. And this should allow you to access your home devices from anywhere in the world seamlessly without compromising on security. So that is going to be a very interesting and important project as well. And do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Leave a comment in the comment section if you have any queries around the video. So I will see you in the next one. Till then, stay safe and stay connected.